The American Red Cross is a name for some of our neighbors. More than 1.5 million volunteers around the country who can help us through an emergency when we need them.
Hello, and welcome to Your Red Cross in Action. I'm Arthur Bertman, a volunteer with the American Red Cross. Our program today is going to be in two parts. The first part will be the American Red Cross relationship with the United States Armed Forces. And the second part will be a first aid primer. For the first part, we're very fortunate today to have as our guest Deb Duxbury, Associate Director of Response and Service to the United States Armed Forces. Welcome, Deb.
Thank you. Welcome.
You know, one of the lesser-known activities of the American Red Cross is its relationship with the United States Armed Forces. But in fact, we point with pride to this relationship. And today, we will examine it. Deb, how did the Red Cross U.S. Armed Forces relationship begin?
It actually began in World War I when Red Cross sent volunteers overseas to be help staff ambulance and help staff hospitals. It continued in World War II. After World War II, they found out that there was an emergency communication needs. So Red Cross and the Armed Forces joined and had a partnership that we would provide emergency communications overseas from military families to the military.
I'm surprised. I didn't realize that the relationship is almost a century old.
It is.
Oh, amazing. Tell me, just what are the Red Cross functions with the military?
The main function is we are the communication link between the families of the military and the military. So, for instance, if a family member had an emergency here, or if they wanted to do some type of communications with the person that's in the military, the family would actually call the Red Cross. We would verify the information. If it was a death, if it was an accident, if whatever the emergency need is here of the family, we would talk to the family, gather the information, verify the information, and then we actually call the base where the person is and relay that information to the base. At that point, the military is the one that would allow the servicemen to come home if that was being requested.
So your function is actually to relay the request from the family to the armed forces.
Correct.
Except that you verify, in fact, whether it's a legitimate thing or not?
Correct.
What if you find that it's not legitimate? Do you relay it anyhow, or do you bump back to the family and
We
say,
actually go back to the family members because we have the communication with the family, and we try to get more information and go from there.
But your relationship with the U.S. Armed Forces is more or less one way. You give them the information, and then basically you've done what you had to do.
Correct. And then they would, in turn, let the military person know what the emergency situation is back home.
All right. Tell me, how about the National Guard and the Reserve? Are they the same as active duty servicemen?
That's actually the same because the Red Cross considered they're all active military. So whether it's Armed Forces, whether it's Reserve, whether it's one of the branches of the service, they would all fall into that same program that we were actually there for the family members. So we communicate with the actual family members. Sometimes the communication is not asking for the military person to come home. Sometimes it's just actually relaying some information.
Ah. Tell me, how can someone utilize this relationship? How would someone contact you?
If they were from Eastern Massachusetts, they could actually call our headquarters in Cambridge, which is 1-617-274-5200, and just actually follow the prompts, because there's prompts there that will let you know if you're looking for an emergency communication. If you were outside of the Eastern Massachusetts Red Cross, you could actually just go into redcross.org on the internet and type in your zip code, and it would automatically print out what chapter you should be calling.
I imagine also that you're there in an advisory position. If someone calls you and says, hey, would this qualify for your action with the armed forces, you could tell them.
Yes. And we also do referrals, so if Red Cross could not help for whatever the reason is, we could do referrals to veteran agents in the area, or we sometimes have veterans that need additional services, sometimes housing, sometimes utility bills. So we have referrals to those agencies, so that we could actually give them referrals to different agencies to help out.
All right, well, you've been perking along for almost 100 years. Do you foresee anything in the near future, or is this pretty much, this benefit going to continue pretty much as is?
This one would probably continue as is. We have been, we did come up with a course called Coping with Deployment, which is a course for families, and helping families revolve around how to cope with their loved one being in the service.
Is this available to the general public?
It's available if you have a family member that's in the service.
Ah, and to take advantage of this program, someone would contact the same...
You would actually contact whatever chapter of the Red Cross is closest to you. So in this situation, it would be the American Red Cross of Eastern Massachusetts, and we would tell you where the courses are being held.
And once more, the name of the course?
The name of the course is Coping with Deployment.
Ah.
And it's actually a 2-part course. It's a 4.5-hour course. The first 2.5 hours deals with your loved one just in the adult situation. So it would go over our finance stuff. It would go over how to deal through the holidays without your wife, husband, mother, father. The second 2 hours of the course is actually geared to how to help children come through situations when mom and dad or uncle or aunt are overseas in the service.
Is there a cost for the course?
The course is absolutely free.
My goodness.
It falls under our emergency services for Red Cross, which means that disaster courses and service armed force courses are free.
Well, thank you very much, Deb, for being with us and for letting the viewers and me know a lot that we didn't know before about the relationship with the armed forces.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting us here.
We're going to take a few minutes now to watch a video that summarizes Deb's speaking here today. And so we'll say goodbye to Deb, and thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
You meet them every day. They deliver your mail, build your homes, protect your neighborhoods, and take care of your kids. They're the hidden military, the men and women of the reserves, the National Guard, and other community-based military positions who step out of their communities and into uniform to serve their country.
No customer that comes in would ever know that I was a military guy, other than maybe by my haircut. I do try and keep it trimmed a little bit.
People are always very surprised when I tell them that I'm a reservist, in part because I'm a woman, maybe because I'm small, maybe because I'm older.
Not very many people know that I'm a reservist. It's not something that I advertise or put on display.
There are 1.5 million members in the Reserve component and National Guard component. That's more than what's on active duty.
Identifying and reaching out to these individuals is the mission of Get to Know Us Before You Need Us, a grassroots program designed to strengthen the relationship between local Red Cross chapters and the so-called hidden military.
They are totally unaware that the same services they found at a post or a base are available in a community.
The Red Cross has an excellent reputation to build upon, but I think really needs to highlight what it has available to the military and in particular its reservists.
Dr. Linda Burke is the director of a clinic that specializes in women's health issues. And for the past 18 years, she's also been an officer in the U.S. Naval Reserve.
It's really important that the Red Cross communicate to the military community locally about what they do have to offer and the possibilities for support.
The past decade has seen a rise in reserve deployments, both here and overseas, which in human terms means more and more people counting on the Red Cross.
You never fully know what's going to happen on deployment, and knowing that the Red Cross is available, it's very reassuring.
As an active duty Marine, Morgan Saylor got an up-close look at the Red Cross military partnership in action. Now as a college student and Marine reservist, he sees room for this partnership to grow.
I firmly believe that reservists and their families would have less to worry about if they were made more aware of the services provided by the Red Cross.
A deployment far from home is not the only way military personnel and their families can feel detached, isolated, and in need of the Red Cross.
When you're a recruiter, you're far removed from the normal conveniences that you have when you're stationed on a military post. Families come across hard times because of illness, death. The recruiter knows who to go to get help. And the Red Cross is always there.
This concept of always being there to serve those who serve is a governing principle of the Get to Know Us program. It's also what attracts people like Bruce Pirat, local store owner and brigadier general in the National Guard.
There are still needs that our soldiers have that don't go fulfilled by the military system itself. The Red Cross is just always there to provide whatever kind of service usually is needed, and I can't imagine having to carry out a mission without that asset available.
The Get to Know Us program works because it's a two-way street. By serving the community-based military, local chapters often discover new sources for financial support, potential chapter revenue through training classes, or an untapped volunteer base.
I find that when I retire, I will still want to be a part of a good organization. Working with the Red Cross is just a natural extension of my career.
Opening lines of communication, bringing hope to soldiers in the field, supporting family members back home. It's all part of what the Red Cross does for the community-based military. That's why they need to get to know us before they need us, so that together we can strengthen the historic partnership forged between the American Red Cross and the United States Armed Forces.
It's entirely a win-win situation. You cannot lose by reaching out to these military community-based families.
What I would like to say to the local chapter of the Red Cross is we appreciate your concern. We appreciate the heart that you put into caring about us. It shows. We appreciate it.
Hello and welcome back. The second part of our program will be talking about how to recognize and respond to a medical emergency. Some of you may have heard this before, but it bears repeating, believe me. First of all, how can you recognize an emergency or a possible emergency? The answer is easy. You use your senses. You can hear an emergency. You can see an emergency. You can even smell an emergency. Hear it? Sure. You hear what might be a gunshot. You hear a scream. You hear the sound of glass breaking. You hear an automobile crashing into another automobile. You hear the sound of an alarm in your home going off, a smoke alarm or a carbon monoxide detector. You see it? Sure. You see smoke coming out of the window of a house. You see somebody lying on the ground. And you smell it. You're sitting at home in your kitchen and you smell gas or you smell smoke. Okay. So what do you do if you think there's an emergency? The answer is you do 3 things, and they all begin with the letter C. Check, call, care. Let me explain them one by one. Check. Don't get fooled. A lot of people think that the first thing they do is go running over and check to see what happened. No. The first thing you do is check to see if it's safe for you to go over and see what happened. And if it isn't safe, don't do it, please. Because dead heroes don't help anyone. If you see smoke coming out of a house, you shouldn't go running into that house. I know. On TV, you always see the hero run into the house and he saves the victims and he comes out unscathed. In life, that doesn't happen. In life, a civilian who goes running into a burning house, as often as not, does not come out alive. Also, if you see an accident on the highway, on a busy highway in the middle of the road, you don't go running out there. If you see wires on top of an automobile, you stay away. What do? If you can't go near it, you jump to step 2, you call. But we'll talk about that in a minute. Let's go back to check. If it is safe for you to check, then you go near where it happened to see what happened. And you look to see if there are any victims. And if there are, what kind of shape they're in. And that's when you have to talk to the victims if they're conscious. If they're unconscious, you have to call 911. So let's talk about calling 911. 911, of course, is the emergency number, and everybody knows that. When should you call? The Red Cross has a list of times when you should call. Let me read them to you for a moment. Call 911 under the following conditions. If someone is or becomes unconscious, even if they're unconscious for a little bit of time, call 911. If someone has trouble breathing, call 911. If someone has chest pain or pressure that lasts for more than 5 minutes, or pain that goes away and comes back, call 911. If someone is bleeding severely, has a severe burn, has a pressure or pain in the abdomen that does not go away, is vomiting blood or passing blood, has a seizure that lasts more than 5 minutes, has multiple seizures, has a seizure, is diabetic or pregnant, if someone fails to regain consciousness after a seizure, if someone has a severe sudden headache or slurred speech, if someone appears to have been poisoned, if someone has injuries to the head, neck, or back, if someone has possible broken bones, because, you know, you can't really tell a broken bone without an x-ray. Now, I know, you're sitting here saying, that old guy is sitting here telling me if I even think there's an emergency, I should call 911. That's exactly what I'm telling you, because we are not doctors. I've been trained in first aid, but I'm not a doctor. I'm way down on the scale. If you think there's an emergency, dial 911 and let the emergency operator know what has happened. Also, if there's a fire or explosion, if there are any electrical wires downed, if there is swiftly moving or rapidly rising water, any poisonous gas, any vehicle collisions, any people who cannot be moved easily, call 911. Let's talk about 911. 911 in Massachusetts is really quite a service. It isn't just a point of calling. Their response is important. If you dial 911 and the call goes through, and even if you hang up the phone before you say a word, they will come to see what happened. If you dial 911, it's important to know what kind of a phone you will be using. A land-based phone, which is the phone connected to your home, will reach the 911 in your local town. If I called 911 from Boston, I would reach Boston 911 service. But if I call 911 on a cell phone, they don't know where I am, and the call is automatically referred to a center which is for 911 calls from a cell phone. In this particular case, I believe it's Framingham. And they will answer the 911 call, find out what happened, and if necessary, then refer you to your local 911. They'll connect you. But you're losing valuable time. So if you have a choice between a cell phone and a land-based phone, use the land-based phone or your home phone. Okay? Something else about 911 that is very important to know that very few people know. There is a service called Silent 911. It says that if you call 911 and the call is connected and the operator answers and you don't want to talk, when might you not want to talk? You're sitting at home and it's late at night and you hear what you think might be an intruder in your home. You don't want to call up and say, help. If you dial 911, when the operator answers, if you push the number 1, you are telling them to send the police. If you push the number 2, you're telling them to send the fire department. And if you push the number 3, you're telling them to send an ambulance. That's important to know if you cannot or don't want to speak. Okay, they can reach you, and they know where you are exactly if you're using a land-based phone. With a cell phone, they know approximately where you are. But let's get back to the call part of it. We've gone through check. We've gone through call. Let's go through care. And I know you're sitting there saying, what? I'm not a doctor. What can I do? Well, there are things that you can do. For example, if you've ever been hurt badly, you know that it is a worrisome thing. You're sitting there in pain and you're worried about what will happen. And for a rescuer to come over to you and say, don't worry, help is on the way, 911 has been called, can be very reassuring and calm you down a bit. And that can help. In addition, there are certain things that we can all do that can help while we're waiting for an ambulance. But before you help, it's important that you know the law in Massachusetts says with a conscious victim, you must get permission before you help. Don't make a big deal out of it. It's easy enough to say, I know what to do, I'm going to help you, okay? And if they don't say no, if they kind of nod or give you permission, then you can help. But if they say, no, I don't want you to help, you can't help. You can call 911, but you cannot help them. If they say no, and then they become unconscious, then you can help them, because an unconscious victim gives you implied consent. Okay? Be clear on that. Don't make a big deal, but with a conscious victim, get permission to help. All right, one of the things you should be looking for if there is a victim is severe bleeding. And severe bleeding, or any kind of bleeding, can be best helped by direct pressure. And by the way, direct pressure is excellent, but you should always try and have a barrier between your hands and the victim's blood. If you have first aid equipment, you should have a pair of rubber gloves with it, or whatever the composition is. You don't have that, a baggie will do. But it's better not to handle somebody else's blood. And even if you do, wash your hands afterwards. But bleeding can be handled with direct pressure, then a bandage. If it doesn't stop, you bandage it over the first one. Never remove the first bandage. All right, are you clear? Okay. So, other things that we can take care of are burns. It's important with burns to know the degree and the coverage, the amount of body that it covers. There are 3 degrees of burns: first degree, second degree, third degree. First degree burn is like a mild sunburn. There is no damage to the skin. It's red. No blisters, not wet looking. In that case, you cool it and keep paying attention to it. 3 or 4 days it'll go away. Mild sunburn. Second degree burns, the layer of the skin is hurt, either blisters or wet. If you're second degree or worse, it depends on how old you are. The very old and the very young should bring a second degree burn to a medical professional. If I get a second degree burn, I should go to a medical professional. Others have to look at it and evaluate it. A second part of the burn is how much of your body it covers. A second degree burn on just a fingertip, you may decide to treat yourself. It's better not to, but you may decide to. But if it covers more than one body part or is extensive, then you should go to a medical professional. Okay, I think that we've kind of run out of time. I would like to say one thing. I'm a volunteer, and you may have noticed that we volunteers are part of an organization that we serve with pride. And one of the reasons that we're so proud of the organization is because they give us full support and training. And just to show you the kind of thing we get, I'd like to show you the introduction to a program called Serving the Diverse Community. It's a program that we are trained in, and it's part of the reason why we're so proud to be a part of the American Red Cross. Let's stop and watch that now.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Dole. It's my pleasure to welcome you to a course entitled Serving the Diverse Community. Before you begin today, I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to each of you for participating in this training program and for your commitment to the American Red Cross. What a privilege it is to work with men and women who, like you, are dedicated to helping others. The people we serve are a microcosm of our ever-changing and ever more diverse society. They are men and women, young and old, urban and rural, and they represent every cultural, ethnic, physically challenged, and religious group found in today's society. The American Red Cross recognizes it must give the highest priority to providing quality service to these customers and clients. If we are to meet this commitment, then we must be aware of and responsive to the individual needs of the changing populations in the communities we serve. The Service Delivery 21 study, approved by the Board of Governors, recommends that our workforce of volunteer and paid staff reflect the diversity of our communities. It also recommends that our staff be trained to deliver high-quality customer services that are responsive to the specific needs of culturally diverse populations. I urge all Red Cross staff, volunteer and paid, to participate in the Serving the Diverse Community course to ensure that our actions support our corporate goals and policies. As part of the course, you will talk about who we are and who we serve. You'll discuss how stereotypes develop and how they can limit our ability to see people as individuals. You'll look at ways in which the Red Cross can provide the best quality service to all our customers. I know you'll find today's program both valuable and insightful. Good luck, and thank you once again for your time, your interest, and most especially for your willingness to serve.
That's our program for today. Thank you for watching. This is Arthur Bertman saying goodbye for now.